Hello, Israel. I wish we could meet under better circumstances. As Aviva said, this is my first time ever to Israel to be with you. I'm honored to be here. The last couple days, I have gone to Sheba and sang and jammed and played guitar with many of your injured soldiers. Most of them are much better guitar players than me. I have also met with many of the hostage families, and I've met with many of the volunteers that have put together this hostage forum. Incredible people, amazing people, heroes. I've also met with United Hitzala the other day. It's been a very powerful experience, the most powerful experience of my life. The song I'm going to sing for you now is called Okay, but the chorus is, we are not okay, and we are not okay. The song is about October 7th, the Hamas attacks, the atrocities, the cultural aftermath, and frankly, what we are experiencing right now at this moment. And when I say we are not okay, I mean we. I am not Jewish. One does not have to be Jewish to condemn the evil that is Hamas. One does not have to be Jewish to support Israel in their fight, our fight, for freedom, democracy, life, civilization against those who want to tear it down. I know you feel abandoned by many. That's because you have been. But you are not alone. You are not alone in this. You have millions, tens of millions, billions of people standing with you. And I see it every night in America.
That was brilliantly said. And that is Five for Fighting frontman John Ondrasik, taking the stage at Hostage Square Saturday night, April 13, 2024. An LA-based musician, for those of you who don't know, John Ondrasik is an important part of the story of Alon Ohel, a 24-year-old Hamas hostage who we profiled in yesterday's podcast. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you make time to watch and listen. It's on our website, stateoftelaviv.com, or our YouTube channel. Best known for his super hit, Superman, which came out in commemoration of 9/11 shortly after that tragedy, Ondrasik never stops. He stepped up for the people of Afghanistan, Ukraine, and from the first moments after the horror of October 7th became known, he was in. He was all in. He was in for the fight for all the hostages and their families to be heard and seen. Five for Fighting, he calls himself, a name evoking a major penalty in hockey when a player is sent to warm the bench for 5 minutes, which is an eternity in a 20-minute period. Fighting, that's the penalty, like old-fashioned fisticuff fighting. And John Ondrasik is someone who simply doesn't back down from a fight. No one is putting him in the penalty box. He has withstood criticism, ostracization, everything you can imagine, because he stepped outside the box for his industry, which has, disappointingly, been very quiet about what transpired on October 7th. But not John. He won't cower, and he won't stop. John Ondrasik is a rare beacon of moral clarity. Just over a year ago, I met John when he visited Israel for the first time with his son. They came to meet with hostage families, tour a bit, and perform at the big weekly Saturday night rally in Tel Aviv. John did a 3-song set, as I mentioned, one being the tune that he wrote to commemorate October 7. It's called We Are Not Okay, and I used to listen to that song compulsively. The studio version of the song opened with a few lines from a very powerful speech delivered shortly after October 7 by then New York City Mayor Eric Adams. It's bone-chilling. Listen to the next minute or so.
We are not all right. We are not all right when we see young girls pulled from their home and dragged through the streets. We are not all right when we see grandmothers being pulled away from their homes and children shot in front of their families. We are not all right when right here in the city of New York you have those who celebrate at the same time when the devastation is taking place in our city. We are not all right when Hamas believes that they are fighting on behalf of something in their destructive, despicable action that carried out. We are not all right when we still have hostages who have not come home to their family. We are not all right. And we're not going to say we have a stiff upper lip and act like everything is fine. Everything is not fine. Israel has a right to defend himself, and that's the right that we know. Your fight is our fight. Your fight is our fight.
The night that Ondrasik performed at Hostage Square, Saturday, April 13, 2024, was also the night that the Islamic Republic of Iran targeted Israel with close to 400 ballistic missiles and attack drones, 99% of which were miraculously intercepted before entering Israeli airspace. This event, if you can call it that, added yet another layer of trauma to this shocked nation. It was the first time ever that the Islamic Republic of Iran had attacked Israel directly from its own territory. Previously, it had always sort of gotten its neighborhood proxies to do the dirty work. Hezbollah, Hamas, and of course, most recently, the Houthis, who've really stepped up gamely. Here is John performing the song, We Are Not Okay, that night in Tel Aviv. It was beyond surreal. For me, that night was a turning point when I realized that I'm not safe anywhere, not even in the center of Tel Aviv, just a few hundred meters from the IDF headquarters, which, until that time, I think that not only did I think, but many people thought that that's probably one of the most secure locations in the country. Apparently not, because it was definitely targeted. Me and my daughter were at home that night, watching the intercepts of the ballistic missiles in the skies of the Middle East, live on TV, into the early morning hours. And we were being told that some missiles might reach target, as in Israel, within a few hours. Some might take a little longer. Apparently there were different kinds of drones and missiles that were deployed, and the impacts were intended to be staggered. It was like watching a video game. I mean, I don't play video games like that, or any video games, actually. But, it was just surreal. And we really had no idea if we would wake up and what we might wake up to. There was talk, there's always talk, but there was talk of chemical weapons being deployed, possibly tactical nuclear weapons. And then there's just good old conventional, missiles slamming into civilian areas and that kind of destruction. So at a certain point, I just couldn't handle it anymore. I took 2 pills at around 1:30 in the morning on Sunday, April 14, and I slept very well. When I woke up at 10, my first thought was, wow, I'm alive. And then I looked out the window and everything seemed to be normal. Here's a short clip of the missile intercepts, or some of them, from that night. It was a remarkable alliance of Air Force power: Israel, America, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and the United Kingdom. And there were American and Israeli defense systems that were also deployed to intercept the arms that had been sent our way.
תקליטי למעלה.
2 שיגר. יש פגיעה. יש פגיעה משתיים, המטרה אומלה. לא נפלה.
4 שיגר על המטרה המזרחית ביותר.
תל אביב. 2 לוקח...
In this episode, John and I discuss that crazy time, and then we segue to discuss his recent involvement with the family of 24-year-old hostage Alon Ohel. We also get into the disgusting and recent spectacle at a major music festival in California recently, Coachella, when an Irish band, Kneecap, went full-on anti-Israel for a very enthusiastic crowd. For this episode, I caught up with John as he was driving through the heartland of Kansas on his way to yet another gig with his band. And since he was in his car, I don't have video, unfortunately, of the conversation. So we've done our best here at State of Tel Aviv to insert visual clips that are interesting, moments that you might enjoy seeing. But a lot of the interview on YouTube will be audio only. But hey, at least we've, provided the animation thing to keep it a little visual. Hey, we're small, we're independent, and we're doing our best. It's a great conversation, and I suggest that you give it a listen. And the clips that we intersperse are just fantastic. This, of course, is a companion podcast to the interview we published yesterday, which I think I already mentioned. It's on thestateoftelaviv.com as well as on YouTube, and it's with Idit Ohel, Alon's mother. We get into all kinds of things, and she really does not hold back. Alon is blinded in one eye by shrapnel, and he is at risk of losing sight in the other eye, but we know that it can be saved with proper surgery or surgical intervention. He has extensive shrapnel wounds all over his body. He has been starved, isolated, tortured, beaten, and humiliated. He has been held underground, chained. No light, no water, no hygiene. Since October 7, 2023. I'm Vivian Berkovich, former Canadian ambassador to Israel. Stay with us. So, good evening from where I am. I guess good afternoon where you are. Somewhere in the great state of Kansas. Right, John?
Yeah, we're rolling from Lawrence, Kansas to Omaha for another show tonight. It's the Heartland, so it's very peaceful.
Tell us what you're driving through, just briefly. What's it look like?
I see a lot of cows, a lot of grain silos, a lot of green, and certainly one-way highway going through the small towns. So that's one thing I really love about kind of being a touring musician is you see America and the world in a way few people do. And you see the small towns, and it's very cool.
I love the small towns. I love small towns. I mean, I'm more familiar with it in Canada, but there's such a great vibe. So enjoy the ride, and sorry to interrupt you, but we got stuff to talk about.
Yes, we do.
So wonderful to be chatting again. Almost exactly a year after we first met in Israel, John, the night that, of course, Iran attacked Israel, April 13th, 2024.
Yeah, that night I performed at Hostage Square, and it was fascinating because you might remember, I'd never, I've done thousands of shows, but I'd never heard an announcement before a show that said, in event of missile attack, everybody please find shelter. And what fascinated me, and still to this day kind of educated me on the spine of the Israeli people, not one person left. Right. I was ready to run to my hotel and hide. And then we played a few songs in the Hostage Square. And then as I walked off stage, the leader of the hostage square, Rebecca, said, by the way, you need to be in your safe room by 11 o'clock tonight. And I'm like, well, it was about 8:30. And I kind of said, well, why not now? Why 11 o'clock? And I said to my entourage and folks, I'm like, guys, you heard, right? We got to go to the safe room. I'm like, yeah, we heard, but hey, we got a dinner reservation, so let's go to dinner.
I remember very well, you and I, we'd met earlier in the day and did an interview, and then you said, hey, come tonight. Well, I went to Hostage Square every night when I lived in Tel Aviv, but when you were there, that was the only time that I actually went around to the press area and stood right in front and took in your set. I think you played 3 songs, and it was absolutely magical. It was fantastic, and you were amazing. And it's interesting how you remember yourself, too, because I remember you being full of bravado. I was kind of freaked out, and you were like, yeah, whatever, So you were doing a good job of projecting whatever you were trying to project. And then afterwards, I went back to say hi to you backstage. And then I went back into the front to, be there for the rest of the evening. And it was somewhere around 9:15, 10 to 9 that night. We all got the same message from the home front command on our phones. And it said, get home immediately. There is an imminent attack from Iran. Now, I've never seen a message like that really like chilled me to the bone. And I remember there was a young woman whose father had driven to Kibbutz Be'eri, which is one of the hardest hit kibbutzim, to go cycling with his cycling group that morning. And his friends managed to leave just because they hadn't taken their bike out as quickly. And he took a little longer getting his gear back in and was murdered that day. But even at that time when you were playing, they still did not know his fate and presumed he was held hostage. And so she was up there on stage speaking about her father. And I'm sure that every single person there felt just as I did, which was, how do we leave in the middle of her speaking? Just, wow. Yeah, I was just like frozen, like, what do we do? But we did. The crowd just fell apart. And she was still up there. And it was heartbreaking. But then I went home, and we all know how that ended. So you and I are reconnecting now, and I'm so glad to speak to you because of the incredible work you've been doing recently with Idit Ohel, the mother of Alon Ohel, who is now 24 years old and has been held in the most brutal captivity by Hamas in the tunnels since October 7th. Why don't you tell us, John, how this all happened from your end?
Well, a few weeks ago, I was reached out to by some of Idit's supporters, and they mentioned that she was looking to do some kind of musical collaboration and to kind of refocus the spotlight on her son and all the hostages. They were aware of my performance at Plaza Square and my song, Okay, We're Not Okay, and the song I'd written for the hostages. And I certainly said, of course, whatever you want to do. We, initially they were thinking, well, maybe we write a new song. But after I kind of spoke to them a little bit, it became clear that my song Superman should be the song. Obviously, Alon is a piano player. The piano in Hostage Square, that I played and that everybody played is his piano. They sent me a picture of him, as a toddler in his Superman jammies, which I think broke all our hearts. And I think that made it, pretty obvious we should do Superman. But also for me, what was important was the context too. Superman was the song that recognized the heroes of 9/11, and it had a big connotation in the United States with 9/11. And so I thought the symbolism of doing another version of Superman for Alone in the Hostages would have a certain resonance in America that no other song would. So we quickly run into the studio. Alon and Ronen, her son, sat at the piano, as you see in the video, with friends and family. And we went into the studio and recorded a new version, changed a few lyrics that I thought were appropriate to really focus on the courage and fortitude of the hostage families, which has been truly superhuman. And we put it out, and I'm very happy for Dee and everybody that it is resonating in a way we hoped. And as you said, it's an outrage that there are still hostages, and music has a way of breaking through the noise like nothing else, and the song in this version seems to be doing that.
John, what were the lyrics that you modified for this version?
Well, I was actually in the vocal booth singing, and the second verse of Superman is, wish that I could cry, fall upon my knees, find a way to lie about a home I'll never see. And I looked at my buddy David Azulai, who was producing the track, and we can't sing that line.
Yeah.
Obviously, many hostages have come home, and we feel very confident that the rest will come home. And also the open, as I said, the fortitude of the hostage families. Look, I was working with Rachel Goldberg when Verse was killed. I've met many of the hostage families. Again, I can't, I find it unimaginable what they're going through and what they wake up to every day, but they keep fighting. Rachel's still fighting.
She's amazing.
So,
Yeah.
so I changed the lyric to find a way to fly to a home I will soon see, because that's what we believe is going to happen. And we look forward to the day that I'm sitting with Alon and his brother at that piano playing Superman with all the hostages, because that is what we're all fighting for.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful song, but what a beautiful story. And yes, amen to that. We are all looking forward to and fighting as hard as we can to make that happen. I spoke with Idit about a week ago. The collaboration between you two became more than a professional collaboration, obviously. It's an extraordinary situation. You've said that you've worked with other hostage families, including Rachel Goldberg. I mean, are you able to this is a really kind of cliche question, but I personally find it really difficult to find the words to explain adequately the depth of the agony, the strength of the hope, and I think the torment that we all feel and work through. And they're not even our kids, right? So you're working so intimately with this mother. What was it like? Obviously different from anything you've ever done, but how would you describe it?
Yeah, there are no words, and that's why we all struggle finding words. I mean, what do you say? It's the unimaginable. When I was in Israel a year ago, I met with some of the hostage families that my son was with me. He was 24 years old, 23 at the time. I was sitting with family members who had their children, basically my son's age, in tunnels in Gaza. And I kept thinking, these chairs could easily be different. And I could be sitting in that chair, and it could be my son in those tunnels. And I don't know how I could wake up in the morning. What I attempt to do is focus on the now. And when we talk, you're not going to ask, how are you? We know how they are. And so you focus on what we're doing. You also I take such inspiration and faith. Somebody, said the other day that these hostage families are one step closer to God. And I thought that's a good way of describing it. They have a certain spiritual fortitude that I think is intimate. So I take strength from them. I'm not naive to the situation. I'm not smiley and happy, but there are times to smile and times and move in a direction that is full of positivity, but we're never forgetting why we're here and what they're going through. So it's really a tightrope. I think it just goes through the history of the Jewish people. And there's a reason you win. And there's a reason you're really leading the fight for civilization. And I see that in these horrible realities, but the strength of Rachel and Idit, I think it's something that has changed me. And if anything, I'm grateful for that.
It's so interesting. There are two comments you just made that really resonated with me. One is that, these people are so spiritual, kind of, I think close to God is the word you used, even if they're not religious. It's this incredibly strong spiritual quality and fiber. And I have a good friend who I bring on my political podcast frequently, Yaakov Katz, and he made that comment many, many months ago when we were talking about some of the less than appropriate treatment we felt these families received publicly. And he said, they're holy people. They're all holy people, and they should be treated in that way. And it was, to me, such a moving comment, as was your remembering or noticing that, when we connect, we don't say, how are you? And honestly, even in Israel, when just, you run into people, we often don't say that anymore because we haven't for so long, because what's the point? And you sort of start somewhere else, or I hope everything's okay, all things considered. But of course, especially with someone like Idit, how are you would seem cruel to someone obviously who knows. Yeah, it's just so, but these little niceties, these little kind of, reflexive gestures and expressions that we use in our day-to-day lives, we've dropped here.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, and you obviously picked up on that. John, I want to briefly, before I let you go, because I could talk to you all night, but you got to drive and I got to pack. But what I wanted to talk to you about, of course, is what transpired recently at Coachella during a performance of the Irish band Kneecap, who I admit I had not heard of until this happened. Can you just describe for our listeners who may not have heard about this, what happened at Coachella?
For folks who don't know, Coachella is this kind of massive outdoor concert in the desert that goes for days. It's kind of like a modern day Woodstock, and they have many bands, iconic bands, and people camp out and for days. And it's kind of the who's who of rock concerts, and every big artist plays. And a couple of things happened. First thing happened was a band called Green Day. It's a very popular band. Came out and started doing, the Free Palestine thing. And they've done it many times before. And you kind of expect that. And of course, well, they kind of did their thing. And then, as you mentioned, an Irish band, Kneecap, came out and again started the Free Palestine thing. But it went to another level. It was, it was very kind of pro-Hamas. They had huge video screens saying F Israel with the word spelled out. They, as the genocide screens, and they were, singing their kind of anti-Semitic, anti-Israel kind of rants, and the whole crowd was like singing with them. And it really looked like, I hate the word Nazi because everybody uses Nazi these days. Everybody's a Nazi, but it kind of looked like a modern day musical Nazi rally. And of course, some people were outraged. Some people thought it was great. But I think it was a reflection of where the music industry is and the collapse of the soul of the music industry. And I'm actually really glad, it was just kind of serendipitous, but I'm glad that the Superman video for Alone came out the same week. So many Jewish people could see, okay, there's another side of this. There's other artists that have songs that actually standing up against this rhetoric and the vitriol, and I frankly think it's evil. And since then, actually, there's been a little movement. All of their American concerts have been canceled. Of course, they have not been canceled in Canada, which tells you a lot about Canada, which is good. I think, that there is some pushback, and it became much more than a musical kind of story. It really kind of, I think, captured all of the news. And I think a lot of people forget that the vast majority of Americans support Israel. And you don't hear that because the media, the college campuses, and all, of course, the arts are loud and screaming and kind of radical. But it was certainly obscene to watch, and it makes me ashamed of my industry.
And you've spoken out so clearly, strongly, unwaveringly from the very beginning. And, I know that you're not Jewish, and that comes up very often in interviews. I mean, frankly, that to me, that's irrelevant, but it does take a different level of kind of oomph for someone who doesn't have direct skin in the game to step up. I personally don't see it as a Jewish thing. I think we're just first up. I see this, and I expect you may agree that this is really a clash of civilizations. This is a clash between liberal democracy, Western liberal democracy and values, and a very different set of values. But you've commented frequently about how quiet your industry is. And there are so many Jewish people in the music industry in America. And I'm sure that you've spoken with many of them. What's your sense about why people who are Jewish in particular may be just kind of ducking for cover?
It's inexplicable. Many Jewish artists, high-profile artists, many record companies are run by Jewish CEOs, many agencies led by kind of iconic Jewish business people. I don't have a good answer for you, Vivian. I would just have to say, I think they're cowards.
Yeah.
I think they're cowards. I think some of them have this kind of leftist woke ideology, and they're still kind of trying to reconcile that with the reality of October 7th. So one person said to me, well, there's 50 million Jews and billions of Muslims, and they buy records. And I thought that was so cynical and gross, but I don't have a good answer for you. It's one thing, as you said, that the music industry has been shamefully quiet, and all of these icons that have made their careers telling us that they are the leaders of human rights, Bruce Springsteen, Bono,
Yeah.
go down the list, Barbra Streisand, that they've shamed themselves. But yeah, Jewish artists that that can't even say free the hostages. It just shows how broken we are as a society. It's just how broken. At the same time, as you mentioned, Israel is leading the fight for civilization. When I was, working on getting people out of Afghanistan, virtually all of them Muslim, by the way, nobody said, well, you're not Afghan. Why are you doing this? I'm like, well, because I'm human and I care about people. When I was in Ukraine, people didn't say, you're not Ukrainian. Why are you here? I'm like, well, Putin's the bad guy. And, with Israel, it's like, well, if Hamas is not evil, I don't know what is. So to me, this is just a moral issue, a fight for my kids' future. As you said, the college campus in America are similar to what's happened in Russia. And when I met with Sharansky in Israel, he said 20 years ago, somebody asked him, what's the biggest threat to the Western civilization? 20 years ago, Sharansky said, American academia.
Yeah.
And he's right. So I think this really is a battle for civilization. And unfortunately, Israel, as usual, and the Jewish people are the tip of the spear.
Yeah, that's a very eloquent response. And frankly, if you had offered up some kind of pat explanation, that would have disappointed me, because there isn't one, as you say. It's complicated and not, but there are so many motivations and types in the mix. But the silence really is deafening. And I doff my chapeau, as we say in Canada. I take off my hat to you, John Ondrasik, Five for Fighting, because you're one of those who stands up, you're counted, and you have such moral clarity that is so important and means so much to so many. And I really thank you for everything you've done and continue to do.
Well, thank you, Vivian. It's always a pleasure. I look forward to coming back to Israel and sitting with you again and seeing your new home. Good luck talking. And send me pictures from your new kibbutz, and let's keep fighting and bring all our hostages home.
Let's do it. And who's in for the cup this year, John? Speaking of Five for Fighting.
Well, my Kings are in battle with the Edmonton Oilers right now. We'll see what happens, but nothing better than the hockey playoffs, and maybe Canada will finally get the cup. It's been, last time we got the cup, it was 93 when they beat my Kings, Montreal, and now there are 5 teams vying for it. So if my Kings can't win it, I hope a Canadian team can.
Yeah, well, it's time for us to kind of reclaim our sovereignty, as they say, and that includes the Stanley Cup, in my view. Having grown up with 2 older brothers, I really do remember the original 6, and I'm willing to bet you that most of our listeners don't even know what I'm talking about. But I just established pretty serious hockey cred. So thank you again, John. Safe driving, safe travels, and I look forward to seeing you with Idit and Alon and all of the hostages soon.
God bless. Thank you.
I leave you now with the full audio-visual version of the revised rendering of Five for Fighting's Superman song. And this is for Alon Ohel, created and performed by John Ondrasik in his studio in Los Angeles in collaboration with Alon Ohel's brother, Ronen, and his mother, Idit. Ronen and Idit are playing the yellow piano that they had installed at Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, a place of pain, solidarity, and a place to hope and grieve together. Thanks for being here, as always.
This is for Alon, all the hostages and their families. May they be home soon. I can't stand to fly. I'm not that naive. I'm just out to find the better part of me. I'm more than a bird, I'm more than a plane, more than some pretty face beside a train. And and it's not easy to be me. Wish that I could cry, fall upon my knees, find a way to fly to a home I will soon see. It may sound absurd, don't be naive. Even heroes have the right to bleed. I may be disturbed, won't you concede? Even heroes have the right to dream, and it's not easy to be me. Up, up, and away, away from me. Now it's alright, you can all sleep sound tonight. I'm not crazy or anything. I can't stand to fly. I'm not that naive. Men weren't meant to ride with clouds between their knees. I'm only a man in a funny red sheet, digging for kryptonite on this one-way street. Only a man, a funny red sheet, looking for special things inside of me, inside of me, inside of me, inside of me, inside of me. I'm only a man in a funny red sheet, only a man looking for a dream, only a man in a funny red sheet. It's not easy. It's not easy to be me.
I will make the request of all those who are here every time we publish a new episode. If you haven't already, please consider supporting our efforts in this really critical time with a paid subscription. Nothing good in life is free, not even podcasts. If you listen to the end, then you value our work, and we value your time. A cup of coffee once a month is all it takes, and it makes a big difference to what we can do. Follow us on Twitter at StateOfTLV, on Instagram at State of Tel Aviv, and that's it for today. Talk to you soon. Thanks for tuning in. We love hearing from you, so please comment on our website, stateoftelaviv.com, or send us a note to hello@stateoftelaviv.com. On behalf of the State of Tel Aviv core team, Jan Zabo, our creative, graphic, visual, and marketing man, Amir White, producer and editor extraordinaire, sound guy, who is also impressively patient with me and my boomer tech deficiencies, and our social media manager, who pitches in on everything, Maya Naftalin. Thanks to the team. Thanks to you for being here. We'll be back soon.